Okay, so it's day 169 in the war in Ukraine. I want to start here with this, just roll back the clock a couple of days, and Pelosi visited China, and the Chinese were flipping out because there was, a violation of the one China policy. I don't know. It seems like we ought to apply that to Ukraine, a one Ukraine policy. Shouldn't we be thinking that way? I'll talk about this at the end. First, I want to go through the day's events. So here's the first thing. Russia doubles a number of airstrikes on Ukraine's position, infrastructure, Ukrainian general says, and the strikes have just continued. In fact, they've gotten more aggressive over the last week, which the Russians have been distracted trying to move their forces from the east to the south while maintaining a fight in the east that's gaining no traction. So they haven't really struck with missiles like they have otherwise, but they've been ramping that back up. Russia's ambassador blames Kiev for monstrous action in Zaporizhia. We repeatedly warned our Western colleagues that if they didn't talk some sense into the Kiev regime, then it would take the most monstrous and irrational steps, the consequences of which will reverberate far beyond the borders of Ukraine. This guy says to the UN Security Council. Meanwhile, and so the IAEA head, now we're talking about the nuclear power plant in Zaporizhia, the IAEA head, Moreno Grossi, still can't get into the nuclear power plant that Russia controls. And while we're at that, it's reported that the Russians again fired at Zaporizhia nuclear power plant. So it's like it's hard to gain your equilibrium or balance when you're just like around these distortions and lies. 5 arrivals, these are some kind of rocket or missile or something, I don't know what. 5 arrivals were recorded in the area of the plant's commandant's office, right next to the welding site and the storage of the radiation sources. Grass caught fire in a small area. Unfortunately, no one was hurt. But again, the Russians are saying, the Ukrainians keep doing this kind of thing. Wait, here it is. The Ukrainians keep doing this kind of thing. The Ukrainians are reporting that the Russians are actually the ones doing it, and the Russians aren't above false flag operations. As of 1700, mercifully, the radiation at Zaporizhia's nuclear power plant was within normal range. There is no fire, which the occupiers' news channels were writing about, and so they'll blow these things up into the on like RT and other channels, Pravda. They'll blow it up and say, see, look what the Ukrainians are doing. They're trying to destroy whatever. Okay, let's move on to the next topic here. So a couple of days ago, there was a strike on a Crimean Russian airbase. And this is a satellite image of the airbase before. And if we scroll down, we'll see the airbase after. And it looks like that wasn't a ammunition depot. So they first said that there was an ammunition dump that blew up, or there was something careless. Remember the Moskva when that sank? They said, oh, somebody carelessly threw a cigarette and that's what caused an explosion. No, that's not what this was. So it looks like it was a Ukrainian attack, and Zelensky is telling his officials, hey, keep your lips sealed. We don't want them to know what we know or what our capabilities are now. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky Thursday told officials stop talking to reporters about Kiev's military tactics is frankly irresponsible. The government in Kiev, on the other hand, declined to say whether it had been behind the explosions, and they declined that first day, right? War is definitely not the time for vanity and loud statements. The fewer details you divulge about your defense plans, the better it will be for the implementation of those plans, says Zelensky. Okay, at the same time, at the northern border, 1,300 or 13,000 Belarusian servicemen have signed an agreement to participate in the war against Ukraine. Whether that was against their will or willingly, we don't know. 6 battalions of the Belarusian armed forces are deployed along Ukraine's state border. Now, these are guys that were active and former servicemen as well as special operations forces, but I'm not sure that special operations forces a la Belarus is exactly the same as what we think of when we think of special operations forces. So I'm not terribly concerned about that, but it is sad that Belarusia is going to be pulled in, and I say Belarusia instead of Belarus because it actually means White Russia, but it's like this Ukraine's war has been terrible for Belarus because they're going to get dragged into it because Putin wants to drag them into it to amplify his forces. And yeah, it's going to be bad for Belarus. Okay, if they do decide to do this. Intelligence warns about actions being prepared by Russia to discredit Zelensky abroad. And you can already see little bits of it. When I talk about Zelensky, I get Russian trolls on video all the time that will say, "Oh, do you know what Zelensky really is?" And they just start spouting propaganda myths. By the way, if you want to see propaganda myths, go to NewsGuard and you can see all the Russian propaganda. Russian Ukraine Disinformation Tracking Center, 252 websites spreading war of disinformation, and here are all the myths, and you just see them again and again, and it's like they're saying the same things with the same words, and you can kind of tell pretty quickly that that's what's going on. So back to what we were just talking about with Zelensky. So they're working on discrediting him, but they're going to do it in a different way. The presidential administration of the Russian Federation has agreed on the creation of a new structure affiliated with the Russian Special Services. Its main task will be to implement a new information campaign aimed at discrediting President Volodymyr Zelensky in Western Europe. And so they're going to create something that they call the Zelensky Fund and have activities. And it's planned to create and subsequently publish a fund's product line and register it on the European trading floors. But it will all be to undermine him somehow and discredit him somehow. If you don't understand it, in Ukraine they're fighting a military war, an economic war, a political war, and a propaganda war all at the same time. You're not understanding what's going on here. And this is a mainstay of the propaganda war. McDonald's introduces a new phased plan to reopen some restaurants in Kiev, and that's good. McDonald's is back in Kiev. What's not good is McDonald's left Russia. Well, I mean, that's good, but what's not good for Russia is that they left Russia and they were replaced with something called Tasty, and that's all. And this is a Business Insider article. I'm not even going to go past the headline. I tried the menu at the rebranded McDonald's in Russia. The first bite of my cheeseburger wasn't as exciting as it used to be, and the fries seem sadder. And they can't get enough potatoes there, so it's kind of a problem. All right, 2 and 3 voters. This is RT now. I'm switching gears. I usually do some RT articles at the end. Here's RT. 2 and 3 U.S. voters can't locate Taiwan or Ukraine. Okay, so Ukraine generally hasn't been a big part of U.S. geopolitical thinking until recently, and that's because Russia invaded it. And so now there's wait, we can't let Russia do this to another country. It's important because you can't let Russia do those kind of things, or Russia will go on and gobble up more. And the Baltic states particularly understand that, and I'll show you what I mean. But here's the map. And now RT's making lots of headway. See how stupid these Americans are? They can't even, find Taiwan or Ukraine on a map. Here's Taiwan. Okay, 34% got it correctly. I'm not sure who they're asking that thinks that Taiwan is somehow in Siberia or something, or in Australia or beyond that. So, okay, ha 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 ha. You showed us Americans. Now, here's another article. China threatens EU nations with response. I thought this was awesome. China has denounced the visit of the Lithuanian official to Taiwan and vowed a resolute response to the move, which describes it as an affront to the One China principle. One China principle because somebody went to visit Taiwan. Now, Nancy Pelosi went and you flipped out. And then the Lithuanians are doing it because Lithuania, okay, so the Lithuanians are in the Baltic states. This is Lithuania, this is Finland, Sweden, Norway, and here's Russia and Belarus, right? Poland's down here. These 3 nations understand what it was like to be overrun by Soviet aggression. And so they're some of the most hawkish supporters of Ukraine that exist today. Okay, so the Lithuanians went to Taiwan, but all they did was go and talk, and you're flipping out. Russia invaded Ukraine, and you're not even thinking maybe there should be a one Ukraine policy. And that's the basic thesis that I have here. What about that? One Ukraine. Remember, the Russians were guarantors in 1994 with the Budapest Memorandum. The Russians were guarantors of Ukraine's sovereign borders, and now they're the aggressors both in 2014 and now. So maybe we should be thinking that way. Okay, with that, Estonia. Estonia is one of the other countries that I was just talking about. Estonia is this one up here. Okay, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. Estonia plans to bar Russian citizens with visas from the Baltic state from entering their country because Russia is an ongoing, unprovoked invasion of Ukraine. Now, Zelensky was calling for this, like, hey, we should just not let Russian citizens travel anywhere. Well, Estonia started to do it. Latvia went a step further. The Latvian Seimas, that's their parliament, at a meeting on Thursday, adopted a statement recognizing Russia's aggressive actions against civilian population as a state sponsor of terrorism. So they're going even further. So I'm telling you, these Baltic states are some of the most hawkish, pro-freedom countries in the world, and they recognize aggression, and particularly Russian aggression, and they won't stand for it. Samos recognizes Russia's violence against civilians, which is carried out to achieve political goals, as terrorism. That's the definition of terrorism. And Russia as a state supporting terrorism, and calls on other countries to express such an opinion. So there we are. Now, I come back to this one Ukraine policy. Why aren't we talking about it? Why aren't we just thinking in those terms and speaking in those terms? Because we should be. Okay, that's all that I have for day 169. Thank you for your time. If you're this far, if you've listened all the way to the end, please subscribe if you haven't, and I'll be back tomorrow.